is with a sense of deep privilege and also deep humility that I rise to present the budget for 94-95. Sir, there are some critical moments in the life of a nation which call for bold and decisive leadership. History is full of instances when nations failing to grapple effectively with the crisis have paid dearly for those lapses for decades to come. As a poet has said, कुछ ऐसे भी मंजिर हैं तारीख की नजरों में लम्हों ने खता की थी सदियों ने सजा पाई. Sir, India faced one such grave crisis in June 1991 when the country was on the verge of bankruptcy. Fortunately, our leadership, our party and our government, under the inspiring leadership of Prime Minister Shri P.V. Narasimha Rao, met this challenge head on. The Prime Minister had pledged that we would give top priority to grappling with the grave economic crisis and put the economy back on a path of sustainable growth. He called upon our government and our people to convert this crisis into an opportunity for national renewal. उठ के इन तारीकियों में सुर्खियां पैदा करें, इस ज़मीन की पस्तियों से आसमां पैदा करें. In pursuit of this mandate, we embarked on a far-reaching program of economic reconstructing and reform. When the Prime Minister launched this program, there were many people in this House and outside as well who doubted the wisdom on embarking on such an uncharted course. But with the passage of time, these doubts have increasingly melted into the thin air. One consequence is that, though we started as a minority government, we are no longer in that state today. Sir, the Prime Minister could truly claim, मैं अकेला ही चला था, जानिबे मंजिल मगर लोग साथ आते गए और कारवां बनता गया. He has shown, he has in the process, he has in the process.
Order, please.
Sorry.
Order in the House, please.
He has in the process shown what leadership is about. इंसान वो नहीं है जो हवा के साथ बदले, इंसान तो वही है जो हवा का रुख बदल दे. Sir, 3 years ago, India was everywhere being described as a basket case. Today, our economic policies attract worldwide attention and interest. This shows, among other things, the inherent vitality of our democratic polity. It was in appreciation of this very inherent strength of the Indian civilization that the great poet Iqbal wrote those famous lines, यूनान यूनान और मिस्र रोमा मिट गए जहां से अब तक मगर है बाकी नामो निशां हमारा कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी सदियों रहा है दुश्मन दौरे ज़मा हमारा. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, 3 years are not enough to complete economic
Must be
restructuring
relevant to
in
the
a
budget.
country as complex as India.
Enough is enough.
But it is time enough to take stock. I am sure that all honorable members will agree that the economic situation has shown substantial improvement. Progress on the external front has been dramatic. Our foreign currency reserves, which were a little over $1 billion in June 1991, are now close to $13 billion. Our gold, which to our great sorrow earlier had been pledged abroad, is back in our possession. Exporters are responding very well to our sweeping reforms of exchange rate and trade policies. Our exports have increased by a remarkable 21% in the dollar terms in the first 10 months of 93-94. Despite all the fears that liberalization would lead to a flood of imports, the dollar value of our imports during April-January 1993 was less than 1% higher than imports during the corresponding period of 92-93. For the fiscal year 93-94 as a whole, imports are likely to be lower than even 90-91. The current account deficit in our balance of payments during 93-94 will be less than 0.5% of GDP compared to over 3% in 1991
please.
and 2% in 92-93. Sir, contrary to what many feared, the exchange rate for the rupee has remained remarkably steady despite unification and lifting of trade controls. Foreign exchange is flowing through legal channels in ample quantities instead of through hawala transactions as earlier, obviously to the great discomfort of smugglers, hawala dealers, and their patrons. The news on the domestic economy is also encouraging. Inflation has been reduced from the peak of 17% in August 1991 to about half that level at present. Agricultural performance has been strong. Food stocks in the public system stood at over 23 million tons on 1st January 1994. This is the highest level in 7 years and provides invaluable insurance against any possible crop failure. Industrial growth is also recovering, though more slowly than we had hoped. Overall, economic growth is estimated at about 4% for the second year in a row. Fears that the reform program might lead to a large increase in unemployment have turned out to be unfounded. The latest available data of persons registered with employment exchanges and seeking jobs shows a fall of 1.4% in November 1993 as compared to November 1992. The slow growth of industry in 93-94 is a matter undoubtedly of concern and is largely due to the sluggishness of the capital goods sector. If capital goods are excluded, the rest of the manufacturing sector shows 6% growth in the second quarter and is expected to improve in the rest of the year. The recession in the capital goods industry is primarily because investment activity slowed down temporarily as firms adjusted their investment plans to the new situation. There are signs that this restructuring process is well advanced, and many companies are now launching major programs to enhance their international competitiveness. The turnaround in investment is therefore beginning. Of course, in real life, the picture is never entirely rosy, and there are some warning signals which we must heed. It has not been possible to contain the fiscal deficit in the current year to the level we had originally targeted. The slower pace of industrial recovery in 93-94 led to a shortfall in revenues, and various expenditures have also exceeded budget estimates. the slippage in the fiscal deficit in 93-94 has been less damaging than might have been the case ordinarily, mainly because of the existence of sizable industrial capacity, idle industrial capacity and low investment levels. But as investment begins to revive, we cannot afford continuing weakness on the fiscal front. Unless the deterioration witnessed in the current year is speedily reversed, there is a serious danger that we may slip back into a position where large government deficits fuel inflation, widen the current account imbalance, and push up interest rates, making it impossible to bring about the rapid economic growth we need to raise living standards of our people and create productive jobs in adequate numbers. Sir, in formulating this budget, I have sought to address 6 major tasks. First, we must accelerate the reform and modernization of our tax system we began 2 years ago. Second, we must correct the slippage in the fiscal deficit that has occurred in the current year. Third, we must build on the demonstrable success already achieved in the external sector, where our strong performance has vindicated our strategy of phased integration with the world economy. Fourth, the budget must provide a major stimulus for a strong industrial recovery, especially for investment and capital goods production. Fifth, and most importantly, we must reorient and revamp our development policies and programs to address more effectively the problems of poverty, unemployment, and social deprivation, which affect a large mass of our people, particularly in rural areas. Sixth, we have to consolidate and deepen the progress we have made in restoring the health of our banking system. Sir, last year, we moved to a unified, market-determined exchange rate system. The system has worked extremely well. The time has therefore come to take the next step and move towards convertibility on the current account. Current account convertibility will substantially liberalize the access to foreign exchange for all current business transactions and also liberalize foreign exchange access for travel, education, and medical expenses, etc. This will virtually eliminate reliance upon illegal channels for such transactions. The details of these liberalizations are being separately announced by the Reserve Bank. Consistent with the progressive liberalization of our external payments regime, we shall review the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act 1973 and undertake necessary changes, including, if necessary, its replacement by a new, more modern legislation. Sir, our policy towards foreign direct and portfolio investment have yielded good results and have helped us reduce our reliance on foreign borrowing. Much of the direct investment approved has been for critical infrastructure sectors. As envisaged in my budget speech last year, government is currently negotiating bilateral investment treaties with several major investor countries. Our external debt, which is a cause of concern, and rightly so, is growing more slowly now than ever before. It grew by about $6 billion per year on an average in the later half of the 1980s. In 1991, the debt grew by over $8 billion. In 91, 92, and 92, 93, when this government was in power, the increase averaged only about $3 billion. In the first half of 93, 94, that is the current year, external debt has increased by hardly $300 million. Furthermore, the recent increase in debt has been more than offset by the sharp increase in our foreign currency reserves. I would like to assure this august House that we shall remain vigilant on this front so that external debt remains within prudent levels. There is no question of India falling into a debt trap. In fact, we propose to respond to the easier payment situation by retiring some of the high-cost debt we had incurred in the past. Indian companies, Indian companies will be freely permitted to prepay past foreign loans. Sir, honorable members are aware that some of our external debt is owed to the IMF. We had approached the fund in our hour of difficulty. Now that our payment situation has improved considerably and our reserves have been rebuilt to comfortable level, we are in a position to repay the fund somewhat ahead of schedule. Repayments of principal and interest amounting to $1.4 billion are due to the fund in 94-95. Instead of following the regular schedule of payments, we intend to prepay the entire amount at the beginning of the fund. This decision to prepay in no sense detracts from the excellent relations we have with the fund, which has helped us immensely in our time of need. We will not hesitate to seek financial support again if conditions warrant. Sir, at present, exporters and other foreign exchange earners are permitted to retain up to 15% of foreign exchange receipts in an account designated in foreign currency. It has been decided to increase the percentage of retention allowed from 15 to 25% as a special incentive for 100% export-oriented units and units in export processing zones, as well as units in electronic hardware technology parks and software technology parks. The retention allowed will be 50%. This facility is designed to protect exporters from having to incur conversion costs when they make payments for imports. The necessary notifications are being separately issued by the Reserve Bank of India. Turning to the need to strengthen fiscal deficit, I have long felt that government should not be able to finance its deficit by creating money through unlimited recourse to the Reserve Bank by issue of ad hoc treasury bills. The Reserve Bank has not been happy about this development, and as a former governor of the Reserve Bank, I must confess to a lot of fondness for the old lady of Boribandar Street. This practice has also weakened the Reserve Bank's capacity to conduct effective monetary policy. Therefore, as a corrective measure, I propose to phase out the government's access to ad hoc treasury bills over a period of 3 years. In 94-95, the budget deficit is being limited to about 2/3 of 1% of the expected GDP, or rupees 6,000 crore. Normally, net issue of ad hoc treasury bills for the year as a whole should not exceed this amount. It has been also agreed with the Reserve Bank that the net issue of ad hoc treasury bills should not exceed rupees 9,000 crore for more than 10 continuous working days at any time during the year. If this happens, the Reserve Bank will automatically sell treasury bills in the market to reduce the level of ad hoc treasury bills. This is an historic step which will in due course contribute to a significant improvement in the fiscal and monetary discipline which our country urgently needs and give the Reserve Bank greater scope for effective monetary management. In subsequent years, the recourse to ad hoc treasury bills will be progressively reduced, and by 97-98, the government will cease to have direct recourse to the Reserve Bank for financing its deficit and will have to meet its entire requirement through borrowing from the market. Sir, interest rates have an important influence on investment in industry and other sectors of the economy. There have been repeated demands that interest rates should be brought down. The minimum lending rates charged by banks have already been brought down by 3 percentage points over the past year. The financial institutions have also reduced their effective rates. I am happy to inform the House that the All India financial institutions are now reducing their minimum lending rates by a further 1 percentage point to 14% exclusive of interest tax. Simultaneously, the commercial bank's minimum lending rate on term loans of 3 years and above is also being reduced from 15% to 14%. The Reserve Bank is separately issuing the notification. These changes take effect from tomorrow and will help to stimulate investment in our economy. Government had earlier proposed certain amendments to the Company Act to streamline the Act in line with the contemporary requirements. Several representations have been received from industry seeking modifications of these proposals to give Indian companies an environment in which they can compete effectively in the highly competitive marketplace. Government, therefore, has reconsidered the matter in the light of these representations, and it is now proposed to submit a new bill to Parliament which will be responsive to these concerns. Sir, we live in a world where science and technology have become a major determinant of the power and wealth of nations. India is proud of the achievements of its scientists and technologists, but a great deal more needs to be done to make science and technology an effective instrument of national renewal and national regeneration. To accelerate the development and application of indigenous technology to production processes, I therefore propose to credit the 5% cess on payment of royalty for imported technology, which is presently collected under the Research and Development Cess Act 1986, into a new fund for technology development and application. This fund will be placed at the disposal of the Department of Science and Technology to help the indigenously developed technologies reach the stage of commercial application. Necessary amendments to this effect will be made in the R&D Cess Act. I shall propose some further measures to promote research and development when I come to my tax proposals. I would like to assure the House that our policies are geared towards promoting a dynamic and internationally competitive industrial sector. I am confident that given our vast reservoir of skilled manpower and entrepreneurship, Indian industry has the capacity and the will to meet the challenge of global competition. Government and industry will work as active partners to usher in the much-needed second industrial revolution, which is both more efficient and more employment and export-oriented. This year, sir, my revenue proposals, to which I will come later, include a strong package of measures to boost industrial investment and capital goods production. Looking ahead, I have a vision of our industrial firms acquiring a truly global reach and their names becoming household words in far-off, distant lands. Let me now, sir, turn to some issues relating to agriculture. An adequate flow of institutional rural credit to agriculture is vital for the development of the rural sector, and this flow at present is unduly low in relation to need. The reasons include high costs of intermediation incurred by banks and cooperatives, fundamental weaknesses in the institutional structure, and unsustainable restrictions on credit and interest rate policies. I propose to take a number of significant steps to lay the basis for its long-term improvement in rural credit. The National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development is the apex agency for rural credit. I am providing rupees 100 crores for augmenting its share capital, and the Reserve Bank will contribute an equivalent amount. This will nearly triple NABARD's share capital and equip it to play a strong leadership role in strengthening the system of rural credit. Sir, one of our major concerns in rural credit has been the weak conditions of the regional rural banks. Of the 196 regional rural banks, as many as 150 have shown losses in each of the past 5 years. Many have completely wiped out their equity and reserves, and in some the losses are eating into deposits. This is an unsustainable situation, and long-term structural measures are necessary if these banks are to be rehabilitated. The Reserve Bank has already announced some measures giving RRBs greater flexibility in their lending operations to make them more viable. I propose to take up 50 of these 196 regional rural banks from all over the country in the course of 94-95 for undertaking comprehensive restructuring, including cleaning up of their balance sheets and infusion of fresh capital. The form and modality of the restructuring and associated financial support will be worked out during this year. The experience with these 50 RRBs will guide our approach in later years to the other RRBs. The success of this program will depend on full cooperation from state governments and sponsor banks who are shareholders, as well as the employees of RRBs. Our objective is to transform presently weak and ailing RRBs into financially viable and effective instruments of decentralized rural banking and decentralized rural development. Sir, in addition, we must find ways of strengthening the cooperative credit structure, which has played a significant role in rural development through credit support. As against rupees 6,095 crores of new lending by cooperatives during 92-93, they are expected to reach 8,500 crores during 93-94. During 94-95, we are planning for a further increase to rupees 9,600 crores. This quantitative expansion must be accompanied by organizational and structural changes which ensure financial viability. The government proposes, therefore, to initiate a series of measures for strengthening the cooperative structure. NABARD will be entering into memoranda of understanding with state and district cooperative banks and concerned state governments for implementing state-specific development action plans to revamp the cooperative system and improve its viability. These measures to strengthen the rural credit system are being accompanied by a substantial increase in the budget provision for rural development, to which I will come shortly. It will also be our objective to ensure that our policy towards agriculture eliminate all necessary restraint on our farmers. Restrictions on domestic movement of food grains and other agricultural goods must be completely removed so that our farmers can reap the benefit of a unified national market. They must also be increasingly free to export, thus not only making their due contribution to our national export effort, but also benefiting from profitable export opportunities. Sir, honorable members are aware, we have embarked on a basic restructuring of the financial system, banking system, aimed at ensuring full financial viability of its operations and strengthening its competitive capabilities. I provided a sum of rupees 5,700 crores as capital contribution to the nationalized banks in 93-94 to help them make necessary provisions against bad and doubtful debts and meet the necessary new capital adequacy norms. I had indicated last year that there would be additional capital needs in 94-95 and 95-96, and also that this burden could not be borne exclusively by the budget. I am happy to report to this August House that in December 93 and January 94, the State Bank of India successfully raised over rupees 2,200 crores from the public through issue of equity and another rupees 1,000 crores through a bond issue to allow the nationalized banks to access capital markets in the same way and mitigate the burden on the budget. Legislative amendments were introduced in the Loksabha in the last winter session. Their speedy passage will help many of these banks to mobilize the capital they need to meet their capital requirements. Many nationalized banks will nevertheless require additional support during 94-95, and I am providing rupees 5,600 crores in 94-95 as additional capital contribution for these banks. As before, this capital will be provided in the form of government bonds on which there will be no immediate cash outgo. Interest payments and amortization will, of course, be a charge on future budgets. Sir, I am grateful to this House for quick passage last August of the Recovery of Debt Due to Banks and Financial Institutions Act 1993, which provides for the establishment of special recovery tribunals. These tribunals will soon be operational and will play a major role in improving the recovery of bank dues. I am also happy to report that the Reserve Bank is setting up the board for financial supervision to supervise more effectively the banks and other financial institutions, to alert banks and financial institutions and put them on guard against borrowers who have defaulted in their dues to other lending institutions. The Reserve Bank of India is putting in place arrangements for circulating among banks and financial institutions names of the defaulting borrowers above a threshold limit. The Reserve Bank will also publish a list of defaulting borrowers in cases where suits have been filed by banks and financial institutions. Both these measures will encourage greater discipline among the borrowers. Sir, the government attaches high priority to reforms of the capital market aimed at creating an efficient and competitive capital market subject to effective regulation by the Securities and Exchange Board of India, which will ensure adequate investor protection. After a temporary setback in 1992, following the securities scam, the capital market recovered ground quickly. The funds mobilized in the capital market through public and rights issue, duly approved by SEBI in the first 10 months of 93-94, were over rupees 18,000 crores as compared to less than rupees 16,000 crores in the same period of 92-93 and under rupees 6,000 crores for the full year 91-92. In addition, a number of Indian companies raised funds abroad through euro equity issues and foreign currency convertible bonds. The government is committed to a thorough modernization of the capital market and rapid improvement of trading practices with a view to ensuring transparency and speed of settlements. The model National Stock Exchange with screen-based trading is expected to begin operation by the middle of this year. The establishment of a depository system of scripless trading is another important objective. Government intends to bring before Parliament separate legislation for the establishment of these depositories. The government also proposes to make further amendments to the SEBI Act and the Securities Contract Regulation Act in order to give additional powers to SEBI. Sir, in my budget speech last year, I had announced the establishment of a high-powered committee to study the insurance industry and make recommendations on directions for its development in future. The Committee on Reforms in the Insurance Sector was appointed under the chairmanship of Shri Anand Malhotra, former Governor of the Reserve Bank of India. The committee has recently submitted its report, which underscores the need for progressive deregulation of the insurance sector to create a more competitive and financially strong insurance industry functioning under an independent regulatory authorities. The report is now under active consideration of the government. It is my intention, please listen to me, it is my intention to evolve a broad national consensus about the future direction and content of reform in this important sector. Sir, efficient and abundant infrastructure services are a necessary precondition for the success of our economic reforms, and especially for international competitiveness. Our electric power sector is faced with severe problems, including problems of financial viability of the state electricity boards, which must be solved if the supply of reliable power is to keep pace with the ever-increasing demand. The sector requires major changes in the working of state electricity boards, rationalization of tariffs, and restructuring of responsibilities for generation, transmission, and distribution. A committee of the National Development Council is looking into a comprehensive reform of our power system, and it will be necessary to face up to a number of hard decisions in this vital sector. Sir, significant steps have been taken in the oil and gas sector to promote investment, including private investment in exploration, development, refining, and marketing. We propose to deepen and intensify these initiatives. To promote modernization and investment in the coal industry, government is reviewing the policy framework for investment, pricing, and distribution. New initiatives are under consideration in the telecommunications sector. I shall now briefly go over the revised estimates for 93-94. Sir, budget estimates for 93-94 had placed the total expenditure at rupees 1,31,323 crores. This is now expected to go up to rupees 1,43,872 crores. That is an increase of rupees 12,549 crores. Budget estimates for the current year provided rupees 41,250 crore as budget support for plan expenditure. This is now being increased by rupees 4,775 crores to rupees 46,026 crores. Of this increase, rupees 3,493 crores are for assistance to states for financing their plans. A large part of this increase relates to externally aided projects. I have